Welcome, everybody. Woo. So really nice to meet you. This lovely Sunday. Everybody aware it's it's a weekend and it's not working day. So many people, and I'm happy to see you all. And I'm just wondering who you are and product managers. Cool, a lot of product managers, designers, salespeople. Oh yeah, see you. Business development people. Not too much. Yeah, a bit, right? Marketing. Cool. And who else? Just shout out. Owners of the companies. That's true. Cool. And who of you are working in a startup? Okay. And like enterprise? Okay. Outsourcing companies? All right. Just a short warm up here. So guys, welcome again. And our topic today is like building products on emerging markets. And we have a bunch of lovely, great people here that would like to share some experience with you. And my name is Dmitry. I'm a product manager at PandaDoc, and I'll be responsible for like productivity of this conversation today. I'll be moderator, and guys will introduce themselves a bit later. And our goal here is just to communicate, to talk to you guys, to answer your questions as well. So be ready to ask any questions you like. We are not sure that we will be able to answer all of them. We've heard like enterprise and so on. We've got this like confidential stuff. Yep. But yeah, let's make it like real conversation. Let's be here present. Let's keep from distractions and not use your mobile phones too much, okay? All right. Yeah, so I wish you productive conversation. Hope we're gonna spend a good time. And I'm gonna sit now in order to everybody will feel comfortable, right? Right now I feel more comfortable, right? And yeah, let's introduce just 30 seconds. Let's introduce each other, not each other, yourself, and what questions you would like to ask or answer, and what company you represent, what do you do in the company, right? Just really short, 30 seconds. May we start with Diana?
Sure. Is it because I'm the guest in this country?
I don't know. You're on the right side.
Okay, yeah, and I'm the lady. Yeah. Ladies first, right?
Yeah, ladies first.
Hey everyone, I'm so excited to be here. My first time in Belarus, and it's been a really good experience so far. The weather's not great, but still, the people are great. So I'm Diana. I work in our connectivity team, and the aim is to build internet access in emerging markets. So we're building for the next billion people. And I'm a product manager there. A lot of what I do is defining what markets we go into. And as you can imagine, a lot of those markets are in emerging markets, since that's the next wave of users. And I'm particularly excited about our conversation today because a lot of the other folks on this panel have done a ton of expanding into other markets, like in China and places like Sudan. So I'd love for them to comment on that when they give the introduction as well, which markets that their companies have gone into.
All right. And in the right corner, champion, all there.
Not so much.
Yeah.
Hi guys, my name is Eugene. I'm the co-founder and CEO/product manager of Ondi. We do platform that enables companies to run their own ride-hailing business. Sort of, if you want to launch your own Uber, then you know who to call. And the reason why I'm here is that we work in a lot of emerging markets, apparently, and we don't know why, but it just appeared that people from there come to us. So yeah, and actually I just realized that when Dana talked about, we've been talking before, and I explained that we work in Sudan and we have a largest customer there. I just realized that they've been under the US sanctions for a long time, and they have been released under those sanctions just like last year, and so they couldn't use Facebook before. So they couldn't advertise on Facebook and use all this stuff. So that's a great market for Facebook.
Yeah, you're starting from like, yeah, we have mics here.
Okay, so I will start. So my name is Anton. I'm head of marketing at Apollon. So you can see our logo there. As I said, I'm leading the marketing team at the Apollon, helping our business to grow all over the world, from United States to Sudan. So we're not really concentrating on Sudan, but yeah, China, Brazil, Mexico, all of our stuff, all our countries all over the world. So yeah, and maybe like you can ask me any kind of questions about how to successfully market your product on any kind of a market, from United States to an emerging market. I cannot tell that I could discuss with you all these folks and all the stuff that we do at Apollon, but maybe some kind of an overall strategic visions, maybe some kind of a strategies, tactics you could use. Yeah, other things. So when I could not ask the question, I will just say the 3 letters like NDA. So please excuse me for this.
Hi guys, my name is Vladimir. I'm quite interesting guy here because my formal title, I'm General Manager for Ask Applications Belarus. It's a part of the same group where Anton is working. So, but I'm dealing with the desktop and website of the business. I am not marketing guys, but because of my training background, because of my agile background, I'm helping these guys to train product managers, marketings, and to be successful inside the emergency markets as well. So all the process-related questions, all the talent development questions is free to welcome here. Thanks.
And Dmitry asked questions we would want to hear from each other. The one to start off with, some of you guys touched upon this already. What markets have you entered, and what was the criteria for choosing those markets? That's something I'm curious about.
About the choosing the market and all those stuff. So at Apollon, we've set our great goal to enter the Chinese market, especially for our iOS and Android application, because historically we worked only with the United States as our core business, mostly the European Union countries like Tier 1 thing, like United Kingdom and Commonwealth, inner Europe like Deutschland, France, and all other things. But we know that the China is a very great market with lots of folks there. Is more than 300 million on the iOS devices and lots of Android devices. So that was a real challenge for us. Once we've done the first initial research on the first how many users we could attract and attain in China, we've decided to enter the market. The first challenge was that the standard communication channels we use in our marketing is not really relevant for Chinese markets. For example, as you know, the Facebook is not working in China, so it is banned there. Also, there's problems even with Google, so you do not have the Play Store in China, so there's more than 20 local stores there. So the main question for us was how we could attract users from China, how we could monetize them, and whether we should go on our own, whether we should go with our partners, and all those stuff. So the first question about how we could attract users and how we could monetize them. So there's different type of our app monetization styles. Historically, we were mostly concentrated on the ads monetization, so we sell ads in our application, and this was a clear non-go for us in China, because to do this, we need to make public contracts with the local suppliers, local networks, and all those stuff, and it was really hard for us as a public company and part of the Interactive Corp, United States company, to do this. But when the whole market's year and a half ago changed to subscription model, we saw that the Chinese users are extremely loyal for the subscription models. So they're really like okay to pay subscription fees. They have really good conversion rates. So to trial, to paid subscription, even up to $50 a year. So they're like having even higher LTV than United States users. So that was the real game changer for us because we see that lots of people in China are willing to pay for our products. So, and the next thing was how we could attain them. As I've said, Facebook is prohibited there, so we cannot use the Facebook advertising. We've switched mostly to the Google. So USC also helped us a lot. So the local campaigns in like USC AdWords. And after then, we decided that we need to make a further expansion there because USC cannot also give us the most of the reach there, so we could spend more and more money, but the USC has no inventory there. So then they go to the local agencies, also helped to find us by the Facebook guys based in Singapore, who is helping, as I've said, so the Facebook has a team based in Singapore who's actually helping the Chinese business to expand all over the world, like in Europe, in the United States, but they also have contacts, like to go to the Chinese market because they're like networking with them all the time. So that's why we find people who could help us getting traffic from local Chinese networks like Baidu, TikTok, like internally it's called like Taotiao and all our application, which also gave us a great boost in impressions, great boost in spend and new customers. So and now I can say that, for example, Chinese market is one of the biggest, I think like behind the US is the top 2 and for some products is the top 1 market in terms of revenue and in terms of the volume of the users.
Can I ask quite stupid question?
Of course.
If we're talking about Chinese market and we're talking about mobile Chinese market, the question is what's perform better, our Android apps or our iPhone apps?
I can definitely say that the iOS apps is much simpler to market in China. So because you do not need to develop any kind of an ecosystem, it's an app store thing. So we have an app store in China. So you could make any kind of a localization of the application. So it's a Chinese simplified language. So you could set up the custom landing pages on the app store, like drive people to those pages and really convert them. There's no kind of challenges in terms of getting revenue because it's also processed with the App Store, setting up the subscriptions and all this stuff. The Android thing is a really complicated thing because if you want to like greatly market the Android application, you need to personally contact more than 20 local like Google stores. So in order to do this, you have to pass through like a really hard legal process because you need to share lots of information with them. You need to add its like SDKs to your application with each of a local store, actually prepare 20 versions of your app, of your Google Play application to market in the China. And also in case your application is somehow marked as a game, you also need to go to the Chinese government to get the actual like access to the market because they need to allow you to market your game in Chinese market. So it is like really 80% of your way to the Chinese market and Android. So that's why our first initial efforts were concentrated only on the iOS application, and like we saw it gave us great numbers of LTV and revenue. And then we've started like those long way entering the China Android market.
Maybe let's talk about some other folks and some other markets.
Yeah, sure. So, and Diana, you've asked these questions. So I suppose you have like any interest in how do you do that? Do you have any kind of framework how to define what you're going to do next?
Emerging markets that we expand to. One, our criteria is definitely the company focus on impact, and sometimes when we talk about impact, that means population. So we look at where there are the largest populations that, for example, don't have internet access, and we have a lot of, for example, satellite data that we can buy from other companies, or we generally use the existing data from the World Economic Forum or some of these public institutions like the GSMA, who can advise us to tell us what population doesn't have internet access. And then we chase after those countries who have a high population, like Nigeria, but have a low population that are on the internet. So this is sort of how we think about criteria when we chase after countries, and also rollout plans for when we decide when we want a new product, when and how we bring it to that country. So that's a bit of the criteria.
Dan, quick question. But what's about mobile phones penetration? I think what one thing is general internet access, but the other thing is what's about mobiles?
Yeah. Well, we see a lot of that being correlated. So the ones that have internet access, they obviously will have a feature, not a feature phone, but a smartphone at the very least.
But if we're talking about Africa, it can be not the case anymore, so I can be wrong, but in the past, as far as I remember, especially we're talking about South Africa, it was a bigger amount of mobile internet user than desktop. A lot of people got mobile phone, got internet access, but they don't own any laptop or PC or whatever.
Well, a lot of these countries that net new users are mobile first. A desktop, you can imagine, is still costing $500. A mobile phone, the cheapest one in India right now is something like $15, which is a smart feature phone. And hence, a lot of the new ways that people are getting on the internet for the first time is way cheaper than how we got on the internet in developed markets, where a computer costs us $1,000 to begin with. So that's where I'm really very keen on the emerging markets, because they're actually leapfrogging how we jumped onto technology. In places like China, they've adopted mobile payments even before Germany has rolled it out and the US has rolled it out. Some of the business models we're seeing in China, the stationless bikes, how are they doing credit scoring by pulling social data, all of that is such an interesting business model that I feel like in the future, developed markets will have to play catch up to. And that's why I'm extremely passionate about emerging markets. But I'd love for you to talk about which markets you're in.
Yeah, before answering this one, now that you said about about developing markets skipping some steps in developing, I think that's the same happens with our experience, is that they are jumping over the public transportation that they never had, and they jump right into ride-hailing, like. So people have to travel inside the city, right? They have to move, and the one way to do that is public transport, right? So this was efficient and cheap up until some level. Now we have ride-hailing and ride-sharing. It's much more faster and efficient and competitive in terms of pricing now. So those markets, they never had a public transport. So we don't have to compete with the buses, right? So we have to compete with sitting at home or walking and taking a trip, you know. So that's an interesting part. And we actually, it's from our experience. So now the question about how do we choose the new market? I never asked that, but we actually didn't. So when we started, we were global, sort of. We were not focused on some market. We were accepting customers from all over the world, and people were just coming, and we had to install a boundary in terms of a first initial payment that they have to make, sort of to filter the customers who kind of, sort of initial launch payment, sort of, and so we had a bunch of customers who paid us and who started their own apps and started to try and be successful. And after a few years, there were a few survivors and it appeared that they are in the emerging market. So that's how we chose the emerging markets. I mean, yeah, kind of. So we have the most leads. Sort of probably 50% of the leads coming to our company are from the US. 50%, but we don't have a single company there who is more or less successful. Yeah, and so if we would choose to focus on some market, we would focus on US because there's so many leads, you know. But apparently, local players are so, so strong that nobody can compete with them anymore. But then we have like 2 leads from Sudan, and they are all successful, you know. So.
Yeah, so they choose you.
Yeah.
or you don't choose them. That's another story, right? You have something to add?
I was going to say, it's all relative at the end of the day. Like you said, in Sudan, there was no previous competition. So any market player that comes in to be the first one can be really successful quickly. Versus in the US, I don't know why people are trying to build the next Uber, Lyft, etc. There's so much competition there. And Uber does so well, and it can offer much lower pricing than any other competitor. So for other ones to challenge them is almost like you have to offer something 10x better. It's like same thing with competing with Google. Unless you offer something 10x better, which Google was offering at the time when they first started, then they were able to win the market. But otherwise, it's hard to win. On that note, I was curious, how do you do integration when all these new customers come in? Do you have to do specific localization, or is it a one-size-fits-all?
Obviously, we need to do localization. We have about 25 languages now on the platform. And obviously, different markets have different needs. So not only do they come with a lot of needs, they also come with a lot of crazy ideas. What's an example? Right? Okay, so the top, the top one of the crazy ideas that I had. So I had this conversation with a US company. I think they were from Texas. They were presenting themselves as so serious. Like they, when I talked with them, he would be like, I have to discuss this with my lawyers. Hold on a second. And he's got the panel of lawyers there sitting and discussing terms of the contract with them, with me, and we agreed on something, and then he goes like, okay, so now that we agreed on the contract, the first feature that we're gonna need from you is the tornado detector in the driver app. Tornado detector. Because he heard about an Uber driver that has been caught in tornado or something there, and I'm like, what the fuck,
guys,
man?
it sounds like collaboration opportunity, because I think we do.
Yeah, you think you could just get some part of our Norway radar application, yeah.
Yeah,
We're
I feel
skillful,
something
yeah.
here.
Yeah,
Something.
Yeah,
Emerging.
Next day, Apollon application, Uber or tornado detector, right?
Yeah, tornado SDK, right?
Yeah, of course, tornado is the key. Yeah. We also have a lightning tracker, so in case your company, the company of your customer in Texas is afraid of being struck by lightning during going to your range,
yeah.
it's totally okay to use the NOAA vibrator.
That's why we would like to say, so for example, our Apollon's apps also saves lives, because you can see what's going on with hurricanes, what's going on with lightning strikes. You can feel safe or stay at home.
Yeah.
So to answer the second part of the question, is what do we do with all those differences? So different market has a lot of differences how they operate, and early on we've been dealing with a question whether we should do the separate version for separate country or separate customer. And having a bit of experience with that, we strongly said no to that, even if we fail, because we know that if you have 10 versions of the system, you are dead. You can't support that, and it just grows. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's crazy. So what we stuck ourselves to.
So.
Is a single version. So we have a single version of the code, and all the apps is actually a single version. So we have 250 brands, so that's 1,000 apps. If you multiply by, yeah. So and there's actually 250 brands, but it's actually one app, so one code base. And when the customers asked us for some specific feature or requirement that they have to have, and we thought that it's viable, we would just add it to the product and make it optional so that everyone gets it. And actually we also take like took money from the customer for that. So it's like one pays for all. So yeah,
For
like on a party.
development. You
Yes.
take my money for development.
Sometimes.
That's interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So basically, go big or go home, right?
Yeah.
Anton, and what's about our apps? How we perform on the emerging markets? Maybe you have some funny statistics about is most popular where?
So it's really like talking about the performance of the application, its marketing, it really depends on the local cases. So when you're building an application actually in Apollon, we're trying to fit the biggest markets and like the most understandable market for us. So, for example, making a scanner application, you need to know how the user will use them in any particular country. For example, in the United States, you have a little bit different taxation system than, for example, in Belarus, in Lithuania, in China. And, you know, for example, in March, April, and May, lots of individuals have their taxation season. Then they need to fill up their taxation forms. It's like individual businessmen, the locals, the general taxation. And there's a funny thing, because in the United States, you still need to have like a fax for this purpose, actually. So a fax. So you need to fill up your declaration and send it by fax or something like this. And also that was an issue, how we could localize our just a simple scanner application and provide additional service for people they need. So it's not an emerging market, United States, but it's a great example. Yeah, so we've just added the fax functional and allowing people like during those taxation season to use the fax. So it is actually the same thing how you could research any other market, like the Chinese market, the Mexican market, the Brazilian markets. So you just need to understand how people would use your products and what needs do they cover with your product. So it is a conception of jobs to be done, like what job the product will do for them and how you could do this. So it could be a seasonal thing and all this stuff. So we've just analyzed the traffic scores of different keywords in, for example, United States for fax. And we saw that in April, when it's taxation season, so there's a great spike there, and there's a marketing opportunity for us. So that's why we've come up with the marketing, and we've come up with the product feature. It's a pretty simple one to do because it's an open SDK, so we can take it from any kind of fax provider, but it will give us additional competitive advantage on the market because our scanner application do not do this. So this is how the thing is working. And also, for example, if we're talking about like a further localization thing, so for example, working in a specific markets, like, so it's a very known thing that if you want to go to the Japanese markets, you need to be a little bit crazy. Yeah, so the Japanese things, it's not so standard as we used to see. But for example, even in China, so it goes not only on the top level of just language localization, you know, just simple translation, but to the level of, for example, the design. So the Chinese people really love the red color. So for example, it's a great thing for them to have like an application in red. So it
means lucky.
Yeah, it's a lucky thing for them. Also, there's lots of you know, like slang stuff when like, you know, you do not know how people in China, for example, talk about like scanning documents or maybe some kind of a tracking women's cycles. So it's pretty sensitive theme, yeah. And in most of the markets, so there is a kind of an euphemism for naming the things is going. So for like, I don't know, like,
I think it's mostly about how to optimize your search requests, right? If you use specific terms like slang, you should be still searchable. Your app still should be searchable. And you see, as you are not a local, you don't know what you don't know, how these things can be called, or how particularly people can be trying to find your app, or sort of not find your app, but sort of their own need by some particular product.
Yeah, it's just the communication of the user request for your application. So when you're looking, for example, for a translator app, you're looking not for exactly the translator app for iPhone. Yeah, it's a big query, but you also may need, like, you know, I need to translate something to something, or a conversation mode or something like this. So this is also a great part of business. And in many emerging markets, there's a local things to name this. And in case you find it, it is pretty hard because you need to like
find locals.
Yeah, it's the best way to find a local. If you want to enter the Chinese market, you need to find a Chinese people to tell you what to do. So, or even how they call this product, what do they need this product for? So this is how this is working.
Yeah, thank you for that. And as far as I understand, and speaking about Chinese market especially, there's a lot of hard things that you need to work on, like legal stuff, like government stuff, and so on. And the question is how to define and to sell, to C-level that the business case that we should focus on an emerging market at the moment, and to not to invest into like U.S. market, for example, where we can feel stable and so on. How to sell this idea, and when how to understand that we need to scale on emerging markets.
So actually the real strategy is pretty simple. So in order to scale to any kind of a market and to present this kind of a strategy to your C-level or any kind of a board of directors, so the initial step is to get the theory. So for example, if we want to work on a Mexican market, like at our best, so we need to have the first baseline theory based on real numbers, for example, from Facebook advertising. So we see that, for example, the cost per target event is lower 2 times than in general for all our marketing campaigns. That means that we have a space there and users are really in demand of our product. Yep. So the next thing is to understand how big this demand is. So this is like the thing of the keyword research or the trending searches or the trending markets. We're analyzing how many applications of the same stuff is on the market. And if we see that there's a kind of a space there for us to enter, we're trying to find out the best way to attract new users. So trying different traffic channels, different vendors, different networks, different acquisition strategies. After we have this, we're started working on the deep application localization. So this means not only the language adjustment, but also, as I've said, the design, the colors, the landing pages, yep, and all those stuff. So, and once it's done, so in case you just need to go to your director or to your C-level manager, you need to give them 2 things. So the first thing is, okay, here's our small but still results. They're small but still good. And here is our potential. For example, I know that for now we have, for example, 500 leads from Mexico. But when we enter in, for example, the Google Keyword Planner, we see that there's at least 600,000 requests for this kind of a product or kind of a related products. So this is our space to grow. So the only thing we need to do is to perform more marketing tests, to spend a little bit of money there and to find out the best strategy, how we could sell the product at our best, how we could feed the needs of the people who live there.
Diana, and how Facebook can help the guys or the companies who want to enter the emerging markets? Maybe you are providing such kind of information or advices, or I don't know, maybe some other tools or approaches.
I didn't even know about that hack, so that's interesting to learn. I think a lot of the analytics on the ads tools can usually help you get a market size of the population that is interested in certain products or are in certain demographic groups. So I think that could be a good way to go about it. But to answer the general initial question, which was, remind me, I have the answer.
Yeah, how to shorten how to pitch a new market that you need to.
Okay, so emerging markets have a lot more growth potential sometimes on particular products. So for example, certain Facebook products have much more engagement in emerging markets than in the US. So if we're able to show that there's much more engagement there already for that product, we're able to then tell the C-level, there's much more to invest in here because we have a lot more opportunity to grow it faster in this market than in the US, even if we think that the US has a lot of the revenue potential. So that's the focus on the growth. And then the second is the opportunity on these folks to then monetize in the future. So for some of these net new internet users, you're their first exposure to the internet, and hence they develop this loyalty to the point that they think Facebook is the internet. And that becomes very interesting because then if you get them to adopt early on, then you probably have them for a whole lifetime. And that's why we want to target them early on in their journey of the internet, access to internet, for that reason.
Cool. And Eugene, so as far as I understand, your like basic business model is built around this idea of like building like products on different markets. And how did you come up to that idea? And yeah.
Long time ago, when we just were starting the company, the idea was a bit different. So initially, my partner has an idea of launching a small sort of service in Minsk. And then when we were thinking globally, we thought that we don't have money to start our own Uber, sort of. Kind of. So we knew that would require a lot of funds or investments to run the operational business. And so we focused on what we could do better is software development. And so we focused on developing the product that others can use to launch their own apps, sort of. And yeah, that was the idea with the...
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah. And I was thinking about one more question that can be potentially interesting to our audiences. One thing is to define or select the emerging market, to using marketing tools to see the amount of traffic inside that market and so on and so forth. But the other question is how to define the new product for the emerging market, right? This is an interesting question. How to understand that one strategy, yes, is go big, go global. This is a big shot. But the other question is how to define the product that customers on the emerging markets will like or love.
This is really interesting, and my motto is put your existing product out there and see what people do with it. So for example, at Facebook, on Facebook, we saw a ton of people start these buy-sell groups using groups. And that was sort of the inspiration for Marketplace. So it was one of those things, we let our existing product out there and we let the people then build on top of that, create it and customize it their own way. And now after we saw a lot of traction around how people are using the product, we built a formal product to support that. So I always encourage products, organizations to put something out there and see how the people take it into their own hands and create, because you get some of the most interesting things. There's another startup in South America based out of Colombia, which is a possible unicorn or an existing unicorn called Rappi. And they're the Postmates of South America. They deliver everything. But initially when they started out, they were just focused on one thing, which was delivering alcohol. But the CEO randomly said, okay, I'm just gonna leave a blank space for what people would want delivered. And they got the most interesting things. People and students wanted cookies delivered at 12 a.m. and midnight after studying for a college exam. People wanted money delivered. People wanted people to go to the ATM to get the money and to bring it to their house. So because they put this blank space and this blank canvas for the people themselves and the community to demand certain products, they then developed a product that was much wider than what their initial goal was.
Yeah. Thank you guys it's a really lovely conversation, but you remember, sorry?
Is that 40 minutes already?
Yes, but yeah, as I said, just at the beginning of our conversation, we want conversation with the audience, and Anton, if you don't mind, I will share this lovely mic with the audience. And by the way, guys, who is building a product for emerging market at the moment? Not too much. So you should ask the question. You're the first guy gonna ask.
Thanks for the opportunity. So my name is George, and I'm working for the company which builds games, online games for emerging markets. And one of the biggest our market is China. Also, we're going to South America and some Europe, Africa. I'm wondering, here have been a lot of talks about technical difficulties in China. It's Google blocked, Facebook not available, but the things that related to people, their culture was not really taken into account. So I'm wondering, what is the most tricky things you got on the emerging markets, for example, in Sudan, maybe something in China, more than just the colors, like 88 numbers or etc. What do you think? What was the most interesting for you on the emerging markets?
Who wants to comment on that?
I maybe have a small comment. First of all, the interesting thing is how we did the localization of our product. So we took what is called an IKEA model. So you know the thing. So why do you like IKEA things so much? Is because you assemble them yourself, right? And you put yourself, yeah. So it's part you there. So we actually asked our customers to help us localize. So we shared the localization table with them, and they basically did the whole localization thing in a lot of languages for us. And that not only did that improve their sense of ownership of their apps, of the product, because we own all the stuff, you know. So we all IP rights for everything, so they don't own anything. And it's very hard because they want to own everything, you know. So that's very hard to convince them that to give them this sense of ownership, so that they go and sort of pursue their own startup, not like an agent of something. And so not only did that give the sense of ownership, but also that allowed them to use their language there, their slang, and they could put anything that they want there, you know, so in their own language, and also the product is sort of gives a lot of configuration stuff, so they could configure it to run in the way they want. We didn't interrupt, and then we would look into what they do and see, oh, that's interesting. They use this note field to pass on the driver history details, and we're like, oh my God, why? It's like,
I think the biggest struggle I've seen launching in emerging markets is the payment process. You can imagine in certain countries, a large population are unbanked, they don't have credit cards, they've never had credit cards. So that's a huge difficulty, because even if you have a service and people want to buy it, how do they buy it? And most places, people have to go to a physical retailer to actually purchase it. So for example, nowadays, most of the developed market, you can pay for your bills online, you can pay for your phone bill through a credit card, but in places like Philippines, people still have to go to a local shop, a retailer, to buy a physical paper to then top up their mobile credits. And that's a huge difficulty for apps and a lot of these products that are trying to reach emerging markets, but can't exactly get people to pay quickly. So now there's a lot of interesting solutions in East Africa with a company called M-Pesa. Who has heard of M-Pesa? Okay, too few people, because M-Pesa really started the digital mobile wallet revolution. When China was still early on, they had started in the early 2000s. And at that time, it was mainly because it was targeting a population that literally people were still putting money under mattresses. The bank rates were too high. They would charge people to open a bank account, and people literally didn't have the means to put money into savings or checking. So they developed M-Pesa, which makes any mom and pop shop an ATM. So for example, your local mom and pop shop that's selling candy, they can also end up being an M-Pesa retailer who then you send mobile money to. So you send them 10 shillings, which is the local currency, and they give you 10 shillings in cash because now you've put it into their mobile wallet. So that has been extremely revolutionary, because any mom and pop shop can end up being the ATM, and hence banks don't have to hold so much money and have all this risk. And at the same time, they can use this M-Pesa account to then pay for their bills, pay for any service. For example, Wi-Fi service now there, you're able to then use your M-Pesa account to pay for 1 hour of data credit. And before, people wouldn't even walk the extra steps to go pay, like, I don't know, such a small amount of money. But this has also been so revolutionary for their economic ecosystem, because now there's transaction history of what people are paying, how much people are spending. And now you have these insurance and loaning companies that can take that data and say, oh, I understand the risk profile of an individual, and now I can determine whether I loan them money or not. So I think the payments piece in emerging markets is a struggle everywhere. In places like China, they're still doing cash on delivery for most of these things. Well, not really. In India, more so in India. So this is something that folks struggle with because there's so many different products to choose from, whether it's credit cards, cash, but then there's also all these available payment companies like PayPal, but then they're local companies. And that's something you have to get right, because if you're going to charge people for your product, you have to make it as easy as possible for them to pay for it.
Yeah. Thank you. And we still have some time for questions from the audience. Yeah. You have the mic.
Hi guys, my name is Roman. I'm a project manager in a digital agency. My question is aligned with your title. How do you find emerging markets, and how do you decide to step in that this market will be profitable? Thanks.
What do you mean by how do you find emerging markets? As in which, how do you decide?
It's a very tricky and very difficult task to find an emerging markets and to find in a precise time, not very early and not very when you are 10th or 20th in this market. So how do you find these new opportunities, new market opportunities?
Yeah. Any ideas, guys? You don't have mic, or?
Yeah, I can have a mic. So as I've said about defining emerging markets, so mostly is about merging your product with the actual, like, the first thing you could do is merge your product with the search inquiries which you have on those markets. But in order to do this, you need to speak to local to get all those local variants of how the product could be called. So this is the first step how you could do this. Also, you could go to the public analytics. So for example, if you're selling any kind of a mobile product, you need to be sure that on the emerging market you have enough users of the platform you want to support. For example, in any kind of an African country, we could say that any kind of an iOS application will not be very popular because the iPhone is too expensive for them, because lots of people there, for example, they may have the Android phones for $15, as you've said, yeah. So it is very easy for them to achieve, but to get the iPhone and to integrate into iPhone ecosystem, you cannot do this. This is also the very general thing. Yeah, and also any kind of a test, as Vlad is talking to me, like landing pages test, you can perform any kind of a test. So it could be in a web test, it could be in a mobile test. So the only way how you could get the knowledge is this market will be successful or not is the test. So you cannot just find the emerging market with only the theoretical analysis based on any kind of data. So the initial theoretical analysis is the first step. You need to know to formulate your hypothesis, to formulate your theory. Then you need to spend real money and spend your real work to test this and get the real results. So this is the very simple and I think the only way to do this.
That's where your marketing budget becomes a driver. Sorry to say that, guys.
Yeah, but also for emerging markets, you do not need to spend millions. For example, if you want to any kind of a game developer know that the game needs to be soft launched to be tested. It's core mechanics, the meta mechanics, all the loops, all the monetization, unit economy. So, and sometimes games need to be soft launched for a couple of years even, and you need to spend lots of money testing your hypotheses, getting the feedback from real users, and no one is launching, for example, a game in a soft launch in the United States because the budget you need to spend on this is cosmic thing. So that's why people are normally going to Australia, Canada, India, and all our cheaper countries where you can get lots of users for a small amount of money and see how we're performing there. But they just actually did not also it will not tell you how the users will pay you in a great markets, because we had a case in Apollon when we saw the great market demand for one of our application. We got like cosmic numbers of CTRs on the Facebook campaigns. We had cosmic numbers on conversion to initial trial periods for our subscription. It was about 35% of all the users entering the application were converted to the trial period. But then we faced a real problem when we got more than 60% canceled all the subscriptions due to the billing issue. So billing issue is a thing when the people do not have money on the credit card connected to the App Store accounts or to Google Play. And this has actually stopped us and prevented us from our development, because from the marketing side, I can see that we could spend lots of money there. We could get millions of users there because they're really cheap and they're converting so great, but we cannot monetize them because they do not have money on their credit cards. So this is also a tricky thing about like doing even the marketing research and marketing tests. So that's why you really need to spend some money and get the real feedback before you're entering the emerging market. So,
All right. Yeah, sure.
I think that's a really great example. I was going to say sometimes you need to find partners in these local markets to enter, China specifically being one. And I always encourage people to go to, they have local tech conferences in any of these countries nowadays, and hence finding partners through that ecosystem. But they also do a lot of presentations about the local tech ecosystem there, what the consumer engagement is like. And that can be a good way to first step into an introduction of understanding first.
Thank you. So we have like 3 minutes and last like quick question. Any more questions, guys? And who was too shy to answer the question, who is developing something for emerging market? Yeah, thank you. Do you have any question? Yeah, you have a mic.
Okay, okay, thank you. I'm Alex from St. Petersburg. So maybe part of the question of Roman, I think, and I have a kind of extended question and a small question. So the small one, Diana said that about correlation between engagement of users and the level of how market emerges. My question is how you define the factors, how you see this correlation, what should we do to be sure that that's the level of how market emerges influences this activity of users, not something else, because could be hundreds of factors. And the bigger question is to, in general, as you see, not too many people who are right now working on emerging markets, but probably we kind of losing opportunity right now. So probably we thinking about that, and but what should we do? Because mostly you are talking now about when you're already there, what to do, what are the tricks, etc. But what to do before going there? Maybe something about marketing and analysis or some other tricks before going there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question, because I wanted to add up this story with like a motivation part, like sell Belarusians the idea of like developing something on the emerging market, or say like do not go to emerging market. I don't know. Yeah, how to sell this idea?
Let them come to you.
Yeah. Well, so first of all, you gotta have a product or something. So if you're just thinking about the new startup or idea, it's very hard to imagine it for an emerging market, because you don't know what your product is and you don't know what happens in that market, so you don't know like anything, right? But if you already have a product and then you think like, oh, okay, so this doesn't work in Belarus, let me try in Ethiopia. Then it's test, right? So that's what the guys already told you, and what Diana was talking about is let the users use it and try what and see what they will do with it. Other than that, you really will come up with the wrong wrong assumptions. And in our experience, we gave this our system to customer and to a bunch of customers, and then when we asked them how do you use it, so they said like, okay, so in order to register drivers, we developed like 3 apps, Android apps, then we give them to our staff, and they check the boxes, and that's how they sign up the drivers. And we're like, why would you do that? Why don't you use like our interface that we gave you? And they're like, okay, so first it's very slow. Our internet is too slow for that. And second of all, you don't have access rights in there. So any person can do anything, like remove everyone or delete everything. And we're like, so we wouldn't think about those use cases. And it's even if we would ask them, we would still get wrong answers. So you have to look how they do it.
Cool, thank you. Do you have anything to add, guys? Yeah.
I was going to say, user research is at the heart of our understand piece of building a product. So for example, we do a lot of these one-on-one interviews where we literally watch the person go through the product flow. We give it to them, we don't tell them anything, and say, just play around with it and speak out loud what you're thinking while you're experiencing the product. Another way we do it is over VC. They share their screen with us, whether they're using a desktop or a mobile, and we just watch them go through the product. Another way is we give them specific tasks and see if they can accomplish it using your product. If your product has one goal and they can't accomplish it, it tells you certain flows are really confusing and you need to optimize the design of it. So user research is at the heart of understanding and optimizing building your product.
Yeah, unfortunately, guys, it's a really productive discussion from my standpoint. Thank you for sharing your experience. Unfortunately, we have to wrap it up, and I just want to thank you again for coming here and share your knowledge. I hope it was productive for you. Was it?
Now all of you have to build your product for emerging markets. That's our, that's our wish.
Yeah, you should. So we have one more lecture from Diana. She's gonna share her experience on localizations of products, right? And one more important thing. We have 10 minutes break, and who already made a new connection today? Not too many people. Hey guys,
you're ask again at the end, and everyone should raise their hand.
Yes, just say hello to your neighbor. You're here for networking as well. So please be sure that you make some more connections today, because some miracle can happen here. Like this, you remember this collaboration, Hurricane SDK, right? And Tornado SDK, and. One more thing, and thank you. I would like to encourage everybody to thank Space Crew for making it happen, and also Altora's development company, who's also helped a lot in making it happen. And I think it's a really great topic, and not very popular topic in Belarus at the moment. We didn't discuss it too much, but I'm really pleased that we've done it. And thank you for being such a great audience. We've got 10 minutes networking, and of course, talk to our speakers. They be here, right? Thank you, guys. 10 minutes, and we'll continue.